Tonight with me, Jonathan Samuels. The Prime Minister welcomes his new MPs to Westminster following a whistle-stop dash around the UK. But the hard work starts here with the government getting to grips with an ever-growing to-do list. From the economy to health and housing, we'll hear how the government plans to implement the changes it's promised the country. You can add to that list of priorities the crisis in the prison service. Sky News understands details of a new early release scheme will be published by the end of the week. But is it simply a sticking plaster? I'll be speaking to the former Director General of the Prison Service, Phil Wheatley, to get an idea of just how bad the crisis is and whether the new Justice Secretary has a get-out-of-jail-free card. Also tonight, the trauma of stillbirth made worse by the stark inequality in outcomes for babies from different ethnic backgrounds. We'll have a special report. Eton becomes the latest high-profile school to ban smartphones for new pupils. But should the scheme now be extended elsewhere? And how's that for a new royal handshake as the King meets the West Indies cricket team ahead of the first test against England? All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Hello there, a very good evening. It will have felt like the first day at a new school for many of the Labour MPs making their way to Westminster today. They were greeted by Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, fresh from a whistle-stop tour of the UK. But once the class photos were done, the scale of the task at hand was all too apparent for the new government ahead of the official reopening of Parliament tomorrow. The economy, housing and the state of the NHS were just some of the policy areas under scrutiny, as our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, reports.
Meet the supermajority.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Keir Starmer's whopping 411-strong team of MPs. Over 200 of them here for the first time. The start of a new term can always be a bit awkward for some. But little wonder he looks so pleased to see them.
I don't know what I told you that.
It's been a day of handshakes and small talk for the new Prime Minister. A visit to Stormont, the second stop on his tour of the nations, promising leaders here a new approach and a better Brexit deal.
A different relationship with the EU, a different way of doing politics, and we go forward in that spirit.
First Minister. From Hamdar, good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Then to Wales, wrapping his arms around a Labour First Minister who lost a confidence vote just weeks ago.
Here in Wales, it's particularly important because what I said before the election is that a Labour government would be a game changer because you would have a UK government working with the Welsh government, delivering for Wales rather than the conflict that I think we've seen too much of over the last 14 years.
It's not just the Prime Minister not pausing to draw breath. The whole government keen to look hyperactive. There's the Chancellor's speech on growth, the Foreign Secretary in Europe, the Defence Secretary in Ukraine, the Health Secretary meeting the Dentists Union, and the Home Secretary out on the beat.
Thank you.
That kind of public reaction doesn't tend to last long into government. And the reality of ruling is harder than photo opportunities. Prisons are near breaking point. Will criminals be let out early to ease the crisis?
I'm extremely concerned with the legacy that the Conservatives have left us with on prisons. All of those things are going to need to be addressed and to be fixed. And the Prime Minister has said there isn't going to be a quick fix, but we're going to have to deal with the legacy that we inherit.
After a straightforward campaign, now Labour wants you to see a flurry of activity. But the difficult decisions are piling up. Labour's got a record 411 MPs, half of whom are here in Westminster for the first time. And they are going to want to demonstrate measurable change, not least to ensure that voters return them again in 5 years' time.
With this many people lining up behind him, Keir Starmer has a blank cheque to reshape British politics. But the public voted for change and will demand results. Will they always be this keen to be seen with him? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
The new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, gave her first major speech since Labour's landslide election victory, setting out how she plans to kickstart growth. But as our economics editor, Ed Conway, has been discovering, there isn't an easy road to recovery.
A new era begins, a new Chancellor, a new agenda, and she's keen to get a move on.
We have promised a new approach to growth, ending the absurd ban on new onshore wind in England, create a new task force to accelerate stalled housing sites. We will also reform the planning system.
For her first major speech, Rachel Reeves gathered business leaders to hear her pledge. She wants to get the country growing again and building again. But that raises a question.
When can people, particularly those who are nervous about having all this building happening, when can they expect more economic growth? Is that something that you might expect in a few years, by the end of this parliamentary term?
It's all fine to say that you want growth. Everyone wants growth. But you've got to will the means and not just the ends. You've got to take some of the difficult decisions. Those difficult decisions have been ducked and dived and deferred for the last 14 years. I think you can see today that I mean business. We're getting on with the work that's needed to unlock that growth.
New housing targets, more energy infrastructure. Strictly speaking, there wasn't a lot that was actually brand new here. But for business leaders, what really matters is that they think there's a chance this time around it might actually happen.
The fact that they are planning to bring forward legislation and action on this before even the recess, it's not the novelty of the ideas, it's the desire to execute them, which I think investors will hear and which is very welcome.
So why is Labour quite so focused on economic growth? Well, have a look at this chart. This shows you GDP, the level of gross domestic product in the UK, how wealthy we are. You can see the pandemic there. We've kind of bounced back since then. But now compare us to the OECD, so the rest of the rich world, and there's a big gap opening up, 6.3%. If you turn that into the amount per person, it's over £2,000. And the impact on the public finances, £58 billion in lost tax receipts.
For this business in Walsall, making electronic components, the energy transition is a big potential opportunity. The problem is Britain isn't on the front foot.
It's been fairly sluggish the last 12 months with high interest rates. The cost of finance have held back projects. So I think most UK manufacturers are in this sort of state at the moment where we need something to happen to get the economy moving again.
The choice of housing and building on this Chancellor's first big day is hardly accidental. But it's hardly the only challenge facing her. Weak growth, strained public finances and long-standing holes in government spending. Her work has only just begun. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Well, another priority for the new government is how to deal with the deepening crisis of overcrowding in the country's prisons. The Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, spent the day holding talks with representatives from the prison service, with new plans on the early release of prisoners set to be announced by the end of the week. Well, the former Director General of the Prison Service, Phil Wheatley, joins me now. Good to see you this evening. Thanks for your time. This is going to fill many people with dread, isn't it? The idea of prisoners being released before the end of their sentence.
Well, we've been releasing prisoners before the end of their sentence for some time. They do 50% of the total amount of their imprisonment in prison. The rest is done under supervision in the community. So what's proposed is a small change to the amount of time they spend in prison, reducing it in order to make sure there's enough places for the people who the police are catching and the courts are dealing with and either remanding in custody or convicting. Actually, I would be more worried if we ran out of places and the police were not able to catch and get people convicted because prisons were simply full. So it's a choice of what's the best way of dealing with the reality that has been left by the previous government. I don't envy the incoming Justice Secretary dealing with it, but it has to be dealt with. And there's no easy way of magicking prisons out of thin air. You just can't do it.
So it's not a great solution, but it might be the only one we've got at the moment to deal with the crisis. How problematic is the situation at the moment? How short are we of prison spaces?
Well, at the moment, we've got, I think it's 87,500 roughly prisoners in on Friday, with about 1,000 places left before reaching absolute bust. But we're forecasting, the ministry are forecasting, it's not this government's figures, it's the figures prepared for the previous government, that by November there may be 94,500 in. And although you can't be dead certain, the fan of probabilities moves from 91,300 up to 97,000. There's no new accommodation coming into place that will solve that problem. So they're forecasting that they will be very quickly bust in the probably by the end of August, beginning of September. So action has to be taken urgently so that that doesn't happen and the justice system can move smoothly.
So maybe a short-term solution. Longer term, though, you mentioned accommodation there. How many new prisons do we need?
Well, that's really for the government to sort out, and that's a difficult one. Basically, the cost of a new prison, just building it, not buying the land for it, the last one that was built, and prices will have gone up since then, is about 286 million for a 2,000-strong prison. And to run it takes £50,000 per prisoner, per place, per year. It's a very expensive commitment. So the issue for the government is what can they afford to do? And I think that has to be grasped against all the other things that we want from an incoming government.
And you're right, because many people might say, look, we need to spend that money on hospitals or we need to spend that money on schools, not on fancy new prisons.
Well, it's not fancy new prisons. They're fairly basic new prisons that they're building, but they may well say that. And I personally might have some sympathy with that. But then we need to adjust sentencing so we aren't filling the prisons by giving prisoners, in many cases, a very long time. The thing that is really driving the prison population is that sentence lengths have about doubled since the mid-90s. So for the like-for-like offence, you're getting twice as long. The average member of the public doesn't think that's true. They think that sentencing is getting easier and easier. That simply is not the case. And it's that promise of ever longer sentences, which the last government did a lot of, which has pushed the population beyond capacity.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a long career in this sector. You know a great deal about it. What does the research say about whether prison works? And if it does work, who does it work best for? Do we need a whole root and branch look at the prison service and the prison population?
It would be a good time to have a root and branch look at the prison population and work out what's the best way of balancing the amount of people we expect to be convicted with the capacity that we can afford to have. There is no clear evidence that lengthening prison sentences is a greater deterrent. Whether you get a 5-year sentence or a 6-year sentence, a prisoner or an offender normally isn't calculating that out as they commit their crime. They don't work like that. So in practice, we probably aren't gaining a lot of reduced reoffending by extending the length of the prison sentences we give. And you can only reduce offending if you work consistently and hard at reducing offending. And there is no magic bullet, no treatment, no method of operating a prison can guarantee that prisoners won't reoffend. And my estimate from all the research I've ever seen is the very best prisons working really well will make probably a 10% reduction in reoffending. And that means if 50 out of 100 were going to reoffend, actually about 45 out of 100 will reoffend. And that's really worth having, but it's not enormous.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that sentiment is something that's been echoed by James Timpson, who is the new Prisons Minister. A very interesting appointment, that. Of course, people will know him from the Timpson's shoe repair and key cutting business. He employs plenty of ex-offenders. Is it a good appointment, do you think?
I think it's a really interesting and good appointment. Somebody who knows prisons, he's visited them a lot. He knows how they work, and he's worked with the Prison Reform Trust, so he's got some understanding of the policy areas. He's also an experienced manager and leader of his company, and that means that he knows how to make things really happen, and simply announcing things won't make a difference. It's making them really happen and doing all the little bits of things that need altering in order to make sure that something is really delivered. And he will have every understanding about that. But it will be difficult, and he won't be able to do it without either increased resourcing or with a reduction in the demand for prison and probation places.
Yeah, extra resources, so many different sectors are all clamouring for. Phil Wheatley, former Director General of the Prison Service, great to get your thoughts this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
A group of bereaved parents has written to the new government urging it to address racial disparities in the rate of stillborn babies. Numbers continue to be considerably higher for babies of families from black or Asian ethnic backgrounds compared to those of white parents. Sky's Shimon Freeman-Powell has spoken to one mother whose daughter died just minutes after her birth.
From the moment she got married, Vaishali had longed to be a mother. But first, she had to fight cancer before embarking on an 18-month journey on IVF, which was successful the first time around.
We were just really so happy, and we just thought all of this is behind us now. Like we can move on, and we're going to bring a baby home in 9 months.
Despite her pregnancy being high risk, she says she was not properly monitored and concerns she raised were dismissed. Their baby girl, Jaya, was born at 22 weeks, but died just 14 minutes later. Her grief compounded by anger, as data suggests her race may have added to the risk.
I think it's disgusting. I shouldn't be more likely to lose my baby because of the colour of my skin. Like, we shouldn't be losing babies anyway, but to know that it's more likely to happen to me or to someone who's black because of their ethnicity, it's just shocking. We're in 2024. You can see they were too big for her anyway, but she was tiny.
She is among parents who have written an open letter to the newly formed government to address inequalities in outcomes, as latest figures show that black babies were over twice as likely to be stillborn compared with white babies. Asian babies were over 50% more likely to be stillborn. And inequalities persist in neonatal deaths, with black and Asian babies more likely to die shortly after birth.
I think it sends the saddest and the most unacceptable message to these women that actually the fact that their babies have a different colour skin they aren't seen as equal and as important as white babies. And I think nobody would want that message or that reality.
Charity Sands supports the parents' calls for targeted action by government and the healthcare system to address the inequalities. An NHS spokesperson said it is unacceptable for black and Asian babies to experience disparities in care. While the NHS has made improvements, we know much more work is needed to tackle inequalities. We are investing an additional £10 million of funding. Whilst Vaishali hopes that sharing her story will serve as a reminder that behind every statistic is a family and their suffering is untold.
I can't get pregnant anymore. It's really hard to fathom like how we've got to, we're almost 5 years down the line now, and we're still empty-handed, and all we've got is a little corner for her in the house.
Shimon Freeman-Powell, Sky News, Preston.
Very distressing, that. Plenty more still to come on the UK tonight as Eton becomes the latest high-profile school to ban smartphones for new pupils. Should other schools follow suit? Plus, the dash for Dortmund, how England fans are planning to make their way to Germany for Wednesday's Euros semi-final against Spain. But next, the government has set out its plan to deal with dangerous delays for people needing dental treatment. But will it work? More on that in a moment.
3, 2, 1.
We've got an election, haven't we?
We'll start with the rehearsals.
Let's do that again, one more time.
You've got to be the best, but that is quite a lot of pressure.
It's just keeping up with everything.
You don't know what's going to happen day to day.
And being forcibly removed.
You've got to beat your journalistic competition. Every day matters.
That was a very tense interview, and I'm still slightly shaking.
You train hard and you fight easy, and I think that's what we're doing.
And now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
coast, and it's evident that is the boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
This is going to be the biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it got us then. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of hits going in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at her arms, I can put my entire hand round. This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Oh! Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Hello again. Now, the government has today set out its plans for dental reforms. The Health Secretary met with officials to discuss changes to the contract between dentists and the NHS. Wes Streeting also laid out Labour's dentistry rescue plan, which aims to create an additional 700,000 emergency appointments a year to tackle huge waiting lists. But will it all work? Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Simon Chard, who owns a dental practice that serves both NHS and private patients. Good to see you this evening. So what for you are the main problems that need tackling by the new government?
Well, I think this contract that was brought in 2006 has been fraught with problems for many, many years. Everyone within the profession has known that. Unfortunately, it's led to a mass exodus from the NHS dental service as a whole. And that's because dentists really have struggled to work within what has always been a broken system since 2006. Really great to see Wes Streeting speaking with the BDA today and actually admitting that the contract that is currently in place is not good enough. It's not good enough for patients. It's not good enough for dentists. And we really hope that this time the government's going to work with the profession to execute on a contract that actually does better.
So just explain what's wrong with the contract at the moment and what a better contract would look like.
So the problem with the contract as it is currently is that it's very much a target-driven system. It's a system that is based on volume and speed rather than quality and care. It's a system where you pay the same amount for 10 fillings as you do for 3, and you're paid the same amount as the professional as well. So it's not a system that encourages the next generation of dentists to want to work in it. In actual fact, we find that dentists, before they even graduate, know that they don't want to work in the NHS because they've heard about the poor working conditions, the treadmill, and the difficulties that come alongside that with regards to litigation and tough working environments. So we really hope that the government are now going to work with the profession to create an NHS dental system that actually dentists want to come and work into, that the young dentists can build their career within. Both of my parents were dentists. They worked in the dental profession in the NHS system for their whole careers. And they were very proud of that. But they've seen its decline over the last 18 years since the new contract was brought in by the Labour government in 2006. So we really hope that they actually do something different this time.
Yeah, we're just looking at people queuing up to join a new dentist that's taking on NHS patients. And it's really frustrating for people, isn't it? When all you want to do is see a dentist and not have to pay the sort of fees that it costs if you go private, and yet you can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it comes down to funding of the system. It's a system that's been radically underfunded for many, many years now. I think the BDA say for the last decade it's been underfunded. And so it is going to require an investment, but there's no point in investing into a system that simply doesn't work. It doesn't work for patients. It doesn't work for the individuals working within the system. And so it's great to see that there is at least a conversation around that contract now changing, when that's what the BDA and the rest of the profession have been asking for so long.
Do enough dentists actively want to do their bit and work for the NHS? Do you think that it could almost be the case where we say to new dentists who've just qualified, look, as part of the deal, you have to work for the NHS for a year or 2 years or whatever it might be?
So I've obviously heard about that as a strategy. I think no one likes to be mandated or forced into working in an environment that is not conducive to an enjoyable working workplace, but also into doing the sort of dentistry that you want to do. So the system needs to be sorted out first. This is not about greedy dentists wanting more. Actually, dentists go into dentistry because they want to help people and they want to care for people, and that's everyone. But the system is what's been broken. Traditionally, what's happened, therefore, is that dentists have been blamed for that, but actually it's the system that needs to be fixed. And for sure, there is a whole raft of new young dentists coming through who want to help. We want to be proud of our NHS dentistry. That's how it was before. Unfortunately, because of the lack of funding.
You know, when you hear stories about people doing DIY dentistry, I mean, it's horrific, isn't it? Or people who want to get root canal work spending £80 by going to Bulgaria rather than having to spend sort of over £1,000 here and go private.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's all sorts of price levels in between. But as I say, dentists want oral health in this country to be one of the top in the world, and we are so woefully behind that. We've got some of the best dentists in the world in this country. We've got people that really want to help, but actually the system that they've been forced working within, it doesn't shine the UK in the light that I know that it should do. But the focus needs to be on prevention, and that's going to come from a whole well thought out structural change around the government's attitude with regards to prevention. It's really great to see. I think that the supervised toothbrushing is going to be a good idea. That's something that Labour have brought in. It seems to have worked in Scotland previously, so that's really positive. But it's not going to work unless we change our attitude towards refined sugars in this country. I am very much looking forward to supporting England on Wednesday night. But when I see the England football players promoting sweets and chocolates and fizzy drinks for the next generation of kids, well, of course they're going to just follow what their idols are doing. So no amount of brushing their teeth in school is going to help with that. We need to deal with it from the ground up.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point you make. Tooth decay amongst kids is terrible at the moment, isn't it? It really is something that does need tackling, and tackling soon. We must leave it there. We're out of time. Simon Shah, dentist, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Now, planning policy is another area where the government has promised reform in order to get Britain building, but there are so many issues, from updating legislation to dealing with protests and even having enough builders to do the job, which lay bare the sheer scale of what the government is facing. Sky's Greg Milam has been to Crewe to find out more.
The houses going up on the edge of Crewe are not enough to keep pace with demand here. 800 more have been approved on land nearby after a fight over things like how many would be affordable housing. It shows, councillors say, when it comes to planning, there is no quick fix.
We do need those houses, no doubt about it. But you've got to bear in mind there is always going to be quite a long lag time between seeing those changes of new legislation on the ground. And I think it would be naive to suggest anything differently.
And all the while, people are frustrated and trying to get into houses.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's families like Nicola Richardson's, 19-year-old Liana, one of 3 of her children, looking in despair at the first-time market.
The 2 daughters, you've saved up quite a lot, haven't you? Thinking about deposits for houses, but then you look at the amount that you would need for what's apparently affordable housing, and it may be affordable if you've got parents who are earning 50 grand a year each.
It just feels quite impossible, really, in this generation, in this world, how it is at the minute. You want to, of course you do, as much as we love our parents, you don't want to be living with them forever. But it just seems pretty much impossible.
The construction industry says any solution means having enough people to actually build those houses.
The levels that we're currently building at, the skills we have in the industry are sufficient. If we are to increase to the levels that government wants to, we are going to have to massively increase the workforce. Now, the only way you're going to encourage house building companies to do that and invest in the people and the land needed is by instilling confidence that the policy environment will allow the industry to deliver.
You won't be surprised to hear that there was opposition to building hundreds of houses here from the people who already live in the area. And for all the talk of crushing that culture of not in my backyard, overcoming huge opposition when it's about where people live, in practice, is a very different matter.
And all the while, for so many, that home of their own remains out of reach. Greg Milam, Sky News, Crewe.
Still to come on the UK tonight, how will England line up for that huge Euros semi-final clash with the Dutch in Dortmund? We'll have the latest from the Three Lions camp. And as Eton becomes the latest school to ban smartphones, we'll be discussing whether the scheme should be extended elsewhere. Hello again. The prestigious Eton College has become the latest school to ban smartphones for new pupils from September. Several other private and state schools are introducing similar bans, with education leaders urging parents to take more responsibility by not buying smartphones for their children in the first place. Well, co-founder of the campaign group Smartphone Free Childhood, Claire Fernyhuff, joins me now. Good to see you, Claire. It doesn't matter, does it, if you're a posh school like Eton or if you're at the school at the end of the road? Parents everywhere are really grappling with this problem.
Absolutely. It's a really, really massive issue for parents at the moment. I think, we feel quite alone. We don't know how to deal with it. It's really tricky. And that's why we set up Smartphone Free Childhood, to empower parents to come together and do something different. And it's incredibly encouraging to see schools actually do the same thing and decide, actually, we're going to do something different here and we're going to protect children from these devices. So it's really encouraging.
So what is your advice? I've got an 11-year-old who's about to start at secondary school in September. She doesn't have a smartphone at the moment. And the head teacher there is saying, look, it's almost up to you as a group of parents to decide what the policy is going to be, whether she has a smartphone and she isn't allowed to use it at school but can use it at home, or whether she has a sort of a brick phone only. What is your suggestion?
So our suggestion is exactly that parents should come together and essentially make a pact in their peer group to say, look, let's all just delay giving smartphones, ideally to at least 16 or as long as you can, because the whole issue with this, as we know, is peer pressure. Most parents we know don't want to give smartphones, and actually lots of kids see the risks of smartphones too, but they all do it because they don't want to be the only ones. So we can change that by taking collective action and coming together and saying, actually, let's just all delay and protect our children and protect their childhood for longer.
But Claire, what actually is the research saying about why kids shouldn't have smartphones at an early age? Because if we monitor our kids at home with a smartphone, and if the school says no phones during class time, and we put blocks on the internet provider, that sort of thing, surely that's enough, isn't it?
The problem is with the blocks and the parental controls is that they don't work. We've seen that from, so many parents in our community who just said our kids get round them straight away. They're very hard to set up as well. They seem almost deliberately complicated. And parents don't have the time to, and all the headspace really to spend a lot of time trying to work out these controls and constantly policing it. So we know that those don't work. And we know that the risks are massive. There's a strong correlation with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, loneliness. And we know that children are watching some really extreme stuff. Quite a high percentage of teenagers have seen beheading videos. They're watching hardcore pornography at school and at home. But it's also the opportunity cost. So it's the things that these phones are stopping them doing. It's stopping them reading, stopping them interacting, stopping them playing outside. We know that kids are now, they play outside. They're outside for less than prison inmates. So it's having a really big impact on lots of elements of childhood.
I suppose the research is in its infancy, isn't it? And it is also sometimes contradictory. I was reading today about a study in America with 250,000 participants that couldn't find a meaningful relationship between how much screen time kids have and depression. So that's positive, I suppose. But you're saying there are lots of negatives. But at the same time, mobile phones, smartphones, we all use them, are hugely beneficial.
Absolutely. They do have a huge, they're very, very useful, aren't they? And we're certainly not anti-technology at all. We just think that for children with developing brains, having a powerful computer in their pocket 24 hours a day isn't good for them. Their brains aren't fully developed until their early 20s. And so putting these very addictive devices in their hands with social media, which we know has got algorithms which are designed to pull us in and keep us scrolling 24 hours a day.
Yeah, we all know about those, don't we?
Isn't good for, as adults we're addicted, aren't we? So how can we expect children without that emotional regulation to be able to resist? We just need to delay it and do it a little bit later. As for the evidence...
What age do you think? What age would you suggest children... you think they can have a very basic phone sort of earlier on, but the actual smartphone?
Yeah, absolutely. A simple phone is all they need. We think until ideally 16, and the same for social media. If you want to track your child, you can put an AirTag on there. The simple phone they can call and text. That's all they need. until much later. And of course, they've got computers, there's iPads, they're going to be online, and that's absolutely as it should be. They just don't need those phones in their pockets all the time. It's too much of a disruptor of their development, their learning, and their chances to interact and play with each other, really.
Yeah. You've given us lots to think about, given me lots to think about when it comes to making that decision for my own kids. Claire Fernyhough, thank you very much. OK, let's turn our attention to Germany. The England squad is gearing up for Wednesday's huge Euro 2024 semi-final against the Netherlands, despite being just 2 wins away from glory. Incredible. Manager Gareth Southgate has faced continued criticism through the tournament over tactics and team selection as well. So just how will his side line up in 48 hours' time? Here's our sports correspondent, Rob Harris.
For a month now, Blankenhayn has been making the Three Lions feel at home. The football hasn't always been sweet, but they're still dreaming of bringing football home. But with ridicule and some abuse being thrown at Gareth Southgate, players are defending the manager who has taken the nation to 3 semi-finals.
I don't really understand the criticism. I think what he's done for the country, for us as players as well, and you know, I think he's really took us to the next level. I think no manager's really been as successful as him. And for me and us as players, we love him.
You've been part of some of the lowest moments, 2014. This is the 3rd semi-final under Gareth Southgate. What has been key to the transformation? We've got way more belief now than we ever have. And I think also the togetherness, and also it helps with the players that we've got now at our disposal. I think we've got world-class players all over the pitch.
The Manchester United defender is the only Englishman to ever score in a Euros final. But it was a night to forget after the pain of penalties against Italy. 3 years on, they're 1 game from another final. But the Dutch, with a huge following and Premier League stars, will be a tough test.
If you see the quality of the players from both teams, I think you can expect that the level of the rhythm and the level of the game will be really high. Hopefully it's us that have more the ball than England.
One thing out of England's control is the choice of referee for Wednesday night's match. But there is a bit of history between Felix Weyer and Jude Bellingham. The referee was banned in a match-fixing case in 2005. And when Bellingham brought it up while playing for Borussia Dortmund 3 years ago, it led to him being fined.
No one is questioning the referee's integrity. England's only focus, the trip to Dortmund. And while they have stumbled and scraped through, they are still here. Can they go all the way? Rob Harris, Sky News, Blankenhayn.
Well, what about the England fans desperate to see the Three Lions in action on Wednesday? Superfans Tanya and Josh Sweeney join me now. They're in Dortmund. Great to see you both. And the big question is, have you got tickets?
We have just, about, 2 hours ago. Yeah.
2 hours ago? Yes, well done. How much, can I ask how much you paid for them?
We paid €600 each. Category 1 tickets. They'll be good seats.
OK, you've got good seats and it's got to be worth it, hasn't it, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely, especially if we go all the way.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about this trip that you've both been doing. Josh, you finished your exams and then you headed off to Germany, is that right?
Yeah, so I had my GCSEs and then I had my prom, and then we flew straight here for the 3rd group game.
And what are your mates saying? They must be pretty jealous, aren't they?
Yeah, all of them are, but they're all following from home with everyone else. So
yeah. And what's it been like spending all this time with your mum?
I mean, highs and lows.
Tanya, highs and lows. What have been the highs and lows? What have been the highs and lows for you for this trip?
Pardon?
Tanya, I was just going to say, what have been the highs and lows of this trip for you?
Oh my goodness, it's like this. Looking at the photographs, this is the stuff of dreams. It's incredible. We're very fortunate. We're having the best time. Met the most amazing people already. We've been away for 2 weeks and we've had a fantastic time, but I feel like we're starting again almost this week. We've still got another week, we've got 8 days left. No, a week left now. and we've still got the best to come, hopefully. But yeah.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And has it been a nightmare organising this itinerary? I mean, how many games have you actually been to?
So far we've been to 3. So we came out for the 3rd group game, and then we were at the round of 16, and then at the quarterfinals. So 3 games out of hopefully 5 games. It's taken a lot of planning, a lot of hours. I had 2 itineraries. I had an itinerary for group winner and then an itinerary for runners up. I've taken some risks. I've gambled, that we're going to go through. It's paid off. I dreamed of how this trip would go, and it's been, better than I could have ever imagined. It's amazing.
That's great. That's really great to hear. And Josh, tell me what it was like watching those penalties. How stressful was that?
Very. I mean, obviously, I've come here for my holiday after finishing one of the most stressful times of my life so far, and it's only gotten worse. But it's all going well. And hopefully it just gets better from it.
Yeah, and who are your favourite players? Who have you been following?
Saka, obviously, but who doesn't like him? I'm also a big fan of Jordan Pickford because, passionate for the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a star, hasn't he? And Tanya, the criticism about Gareth Southgate, is that fair, do you think?
To be fair, out here, the criticism that we see at home, and I use social media a lot. I've at times thought I'm not going to look at it anymore. I think everybody out here is a lot more positive. I don't know whether we're more invested, that everyone that's made big sacrifices, and it's a big thing for a lot of people. So no, we're not even using the word if now. We make it to Sunday. That's banned.
Wow.
And
so it's coming home. This is great to hear. Well, listen, it's been lovely speaking to you both. Enjoy the rest of your trip, and I hope you get tickets to the final. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Tanya and Josh Sweeney, thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
Good to see you. Coming up next on the UK Tonight, the King has a very special greeting from the West Indies cricket team ahead of Wednesday's first test.
There's a likelihood there will be more wildfires in Greece this summer. I mean, that's a fact. If you're going there, there is a chance you may experience them. I suppose the reassurance is that following last summer, and of course, really dreadful fires and huge consequences on holidaymakers, the Greek authorities have ramped up their wildfire reaction. So they've doubled the firefighting force. They've got water-dropping planes, drones. I think tour operators are probably better prepared now. They've got better systems in place. And it's just down to us as holidaymakers really to support that, to have the apps, to be, to listen to advice and just to be a little bit more aware. And there was a very dry, very mild winter. And then, as you say, drought in June, really strong winds. It's effectively a tinderbox out there. So although I spoke to somebody in Crete yesterday and they said it's actually quite humid at the moment. So, obviously the weather is a changing situation. It is a good idea to travel with a tour operator or book with a travel agent. You have that added support when you're out there. If it does escalate and there is a wildfire and you do need to be repatriated or worst case scenario, you've got all that protection there. If you are travelling independently, great, just make sure you've read your travel insurance policy, you're covered for extreme weather, and just keep your fingers crossed.
I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's chief North of England correspondent. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
So it's mid-July, the weather's miserable, which can mean only one thing, the start of the international summer for the England men's test team. Rob Jones from Sky Sports News is with me in the studio. Good to see you, Rob. Jimmy Anderson, it's going to be his final test. How's he feeling about it? What's he said?
Well, he's emotional, and I don't think there's going to be a dry eye in the house at Lord's over the course of the week. We're still trying to deal with Andy Murray playing at Wimbledon for the final time. Now we've got Jimmy Anderson as well saying his farewells. It was really interesting to hear him talk today, and one of the reporters in the press conference said, "Do you think you've still got more to offer?" And he said, "Well, it's not my decision." And I think there is a feeling, even at 41 years of age, with 187 test matches under his belt and 700 wickets as well, he still feels that he could go on a little longer. And I think that was the difference between him and his great friend Stuart Broad, who retired last summer, is that Broad knew when to say goodbye. For Jimmy Anderson, I think he would have gone on and on and on until, as what's happened, he was called in by head coach, director of men's cricket, and said, "Look, we think your time is coming to an end." And you just hope that Jimmy Anderson has the same sort of farewell that Stuart Broad enjoyed against Australia last summer.
That was a bit of the Andy Murray issue going on there as well, isn't it? You know, just not quite knowing perhaps when the right time is.
Yeah, I mean, the difference, I guess, between Anderson and Andy Murray is that Murray's body was failing him. He's got a metal hip. He was stumbling around centre court last week, bless him, playing with his brother. And I think he felt that the time is coming to an end after the Olympics to say goodbye. Anderson, even though he is 41, is in incredible physical shape. He barely ever gets injured, still going. Took 7 wickets in a championship game for Lancashire against Notts last week. He feels there is more to come, but I think every once in a while in the elite international professional sport, someone takes it out of your hands and says, "Unfortunately, we think you're done. We need to look at younger bowlers."
How are England feeling, do you think, ahead of the test?
I think good. I mean, it's such a strange thing. As you said, it is July and they're playing only now their first test match of the summer. Yeah, because they've been playing what's a very strange global tournament overseas. They had the World T20 in the West Indies, so they're only playing a test match now. There have been the first, I guess, question marks of particularly Brendan McCullum as a coach, but Ben Stokes too, because didn't win the Ashes last summer, were pretty well beaten in India over the course of the winter. This is 2 series coming up, West Indies first, then Sri Lanka, that England should win and win well as they prepare for next winter when they go into an Ashes series.
Yeah, talking about West Indies preparing, they met the King yesterday, and there was this lovely moment, we can see it now, where they were teaching the King a new handshake. You can see it here. It's a 5-step handshake, starting with a fist bump and then ending by putting your hand on your chest. I think the King looks a bit bemused, Rob, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he would probably require a few more practice sessions, bless him, King Charles, to try and get himself through that. But worth a go. And the West Indies are brilliant because they bring so much to any sort of tour they're on. I think they're a lot of people's second favourite team as well. So it should be a fascinating series. Got some very good young bowlers as well. That's Wednesday. And let's catch up with the rest of today's sport, though, now.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Can you please welcome a man with insights as sharp as a well-timed tackle, an 8-time Premier League winner, an England stalwart for 12 years.
Stalwart.
But a Valencia manager for only 4 months. It's the very bad boy, Gary, the treble, Neville!
Yes!
And his opponent, he's a Liverpool legend.
Oh, yeah.
And a Champions League winner.
Oh, best ever.
It's the bruiser from Bootle, Jamie Istanbul's-Eye Carragher!
Yes!
This round is a 9-dart challenge. You'll both throw 9 darts, and simply the highest score will win. So, 1 dart nearest the bullseye to decide who goes first.
Oh.
That's outside the 25.
Can you take that one out?
Leave it.
No.
I'll be here all day otherwise.
What are you doing?
If that was over the hockey, you need to throw it again.
No, hang on, he's disqualified.
Stay
he can
behind
go
the...
first. He can go first. Ban him, honestly. Go first. You're on. You're first.
Oh, God, it's off the board. 1. And 14 is 15.
That ain't going to be good enough, my friend.
20.
We've played before. Oh, no.
He went so slow
with Dad.
Oh, it's 24.
24. That's not good enough, that. Honestly, I'd let you off the hook there. I should put you away there.
4.
Ooh, not bad.
20.
Treble!
Treble 4. It's 36. So you're up to 51.
Why do you always panic? Oh,
Treble 12.
Are you still walking back?
Treble 5.
Go away. Go away.
And a 20.
I'll put you to bed.
71.
Gary,
up to 95.
Gary the treble, Neville. Put you to bed.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
I tell you, I know who nailed that handshake. It'd be little Louis, wouldn't it? Prince Louis would know what to do. We've just got time to show you some incredible pictures from Cornwall. Take a look at this. An ice cream van found itself in a flaky situation yesterday afternoon after being swept out to sea. Oh dear, look, the Kelly Whip ice cream van buffeted by waves after being scooped out into the water at picturesque Harlyn Bay Beach, north of Newquay. Witnesses told local media that the van had become stuck in the sand as the tide crept in. Yeah, miserable weather. Let's take a look at how things are going to shape up over the next few days. Well, it's going to look quite cool and unsettled, surprise, surprise, with weather warnings in place even. But from Thursday, there will be some improvement in the weather. Much of Wales and central and southern England will be wet this evening, with heavy rain likely in the windy southwest. Elsewhere, it'll be mainly fine, apart from a few showers. Rain, locally heavy, will move across more of England and Wales tonight, while extending into parts of Ireland. There will be a few showers for Northern Ireland, but much of Scotland will be dry and clear. It's going to be chilly there, mild for most others. 6 a.m. on Tuesday, those are your temperatures. Tomorrow morning, we'll see rain over central parts, edging further north. But northern Scotland can expect sunshine and showers once again. Western Ireland should avoid the rain altogether. Meanwhile, the rather cloudy south of Britain will see patchy rain, especially in the southeast. It's going to be warmer than recently and actually quite muggy in the south. Now, the afternoon will see rain taking over more of Northern Ireland and Scotland. Further south, increasing brightness will bring some heavy and thundery showers to parts of England. And that is all from the UK tonight. Thank you very much for your company. You can catch up on the highlights on our webpage. Just scan the QR code on screen. Yalda is here next on Sky News with The World. She's got a special programme for you from Paris following the French elections. Very good night.